Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and welcome to a game development tutorial on how to make a simple piano app game in Unity. This video collection will guide you through everything you need to know, and I'll even provide you with all scripts and assets as we go along the way. Remember to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay up to date with every tutorial I upload, and feel free to leave a comment or drop a like. I also have a Patreon page where you can help be a part of this channel, and you'll also find all the scripts and the assets for this video there too, along with plenty of other things, and you can also join as a free member. So the game we'll be building is just going to be a simple app or a small, fully functional piano, and the opportunity to develop it further with the skills you'll learn along the way. We'll be making this game for free, and it will cost you absolutely nothing as long as you put your mind to it. So, who is this tutorial for? Well, it's going to be aimed at newcomers to the game development world and app development world, as well as intermediate developers. And even if you're a veteran at making games and apps, stick around to see how we tackle things and how easy we can achieve the desired effect in this rather unique game development series. So this first tutorial will explore how to get Unity on your PC, we'll explore the hub, and we'll get acquainted with the engine interface itself and start inserting game objects. So, how do you get Unity? Easy, unity.com and download the hub. What is the hub? The hub is this. So you can see mine, I have a couple of projects running at the moment. Yours will look similar to this, if not empty, if you are indeed brand new to Unity. So what do you need to do to get going? Simple. You need to head to installs and you need to install the editor. And what that is the engine itself. So if you click up here and install editor, you'll be able to install the latest stable version of Unity. Now you don't have to use the latest stable version of Unity, you can use any version you want, but I would recommend using one that Unity says is the latest stable. So what do we do then? Well, we go to projects and then we add new project up here. We're going to be doing this in 2D. So we'll use the 2D built-in render pipeline. You can then name your project over here, anything you want. So it can be my piano, piano app, whatever you want. The location where you want to save it. And then further down here, you can have the option to connect to Unity Cloud or use the version control. It's up to you whether you want to connect to the cloud or use version control. I tend to have both of these unticked. And if you are connected to the internet, you can indeed select your organization, which is just your login. So to use Unity, you do need to have a free account. So once you click on Create Project, after a couple of minutes, you'll be presented with something that looks like this. So what is this? This is the Unity engine. It's a very default layout, and it is very similar to a lot of other engines that you may have come across over your game dev journey. So let's go through a couple of these things. We don't need to use everything, but we'll go through the things that we do need to use at the moment. This over here is the hierarchy. So this panel here is where we store all of our game job objects in text form. So for example, we currently just have a main camera. And you can see if I select it here, it will select it over here. What is this big view here? Well, this is the scene view. This is where we develop our games. And you can see at the side of the scene view, we have a couple of different little icons that we can use. So if we use the hand, we can hold down our left mouse button and move around. If we select this, we can move game objects on the Y and X axis. And on this, we can rotate. And this one is going to be very handy a little later on because it will allow us to manipulate objects a little better in the scene view. This is called the Rect tool. Next, we have the game view. And at the moment, it is just a big blue screen. Why is that? Because there is no real game to actually play. But this is where we'll be able to play our little piano app in real time in Engine. So let's head back to scene view. And let's have a look over here at the inspector panel. What is the inspector panel? This is where we store components for game objects. What are components? Well, a component can be used to store information and make a game object do something. So in this case, we have the main camera selected, and the components for the main camera is a transform component and a camera component. A transform component will exist on every game object due to its use. It dictates the position, rotation, and scale, or size. And we can set them on the X, Y, and Z coordinates. So in this case, we can see that the camera position is 0, 0, and -10. Rotation is also 0, 0, 0. Scale is 1, 1, 1. So the size of 1, 1, 1 is a standard default size. We'll change a couple of these settings as we go further into the videos, but don't worry about these for now. And the camera component, because it's a camera, all this will do is this will add various things to your camera to make it work. I.e., you can see the background is currently really nice blue. That can be changed if we want to. Not every component can be used on every game object, but there are literally hundreds of different components that you can use. We'll use different ones as we go through the videos. Down here we have the project window. What is the project window? This is where we store all of our assets. So when we import some assets into our game or app, they'll be brought in down here and we'll be able to use them. And then we can then transfer them from the scene or into the hierarchy. And that's the basic building blocks of how we build games and apps. Next, we have a console section, and this is where we can see any errors that may occur within the game or within the scripts. We hopefully won't need to use this console, and the animation we probably won't use within this project. So, that is the very basic layout of Unity itself. Is there anything else that we need to address at the moment? Well, yes, there is. If we go to File, and if we go to Build Settings, we can have a look here and see what platforms that we are currently building for. In this case, you can see, dictated by the Unity icon there, that we are currently set as Windows, Mac, and Linux. You could set it to Android if you want to, or iOS, whatever you want to build for. But anything you build in Unity can be ported to any supported platform. So it doesn't matter if you start building in Windows, you can port it to Android later on. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to build this for Windows, test it, and then you could import it and change it for Android. So we're going to use keyboard controls and touch controls within this video tutorial. So for now, let's leave it set as Windows, Mac, Linux, and let's close this. So we've learned everything we need to know that's important right now. What shall we do? Well, let's add our first game object. Let's go to Game Object, let's go to UI, and let's go to Button Text Mesh Pro. If you're using an older version of Unity, it may not be Text Mesh Pro. Don't worry about that too much. They function the same. So because we are using Text Mesh Pro, we do need to import the essentials. So if you get this message, click on Import TMP Essentials, and all that will do is allow Unity to use Text Mesh Pro, because you could still theoretically use it in the old way, but if not, you can just import that. Don't worry about the second one, we will not need that, so we can close that window now, and we can see our button looks rather large. So let's use our mouse wheel to scroll out. Let's also hold down our middle mouse wheel, and we can change view like that and zoom out. So it's worth noting that this button is huge, and this is our camera view right here. And if we go to our game view, it's going to look like that. So keep in mind that the canvas itself is what is projected onto the game view. What is the canvas? Let's double click it. So the canvas is basically where everything is stored visually on screen if it is a UI element. For example, everything we're going to do in this tutorial series will be based on UI. So everything within the canvas is what we're going to need. So how do we make it so as the canvas fits our screen rather than look a bit strange? Well, if we go over here to Canvas Scaler and change constant pixel size to scale with screen size, and let's set a standard screen size that most people would use, which is 1920 by 1080. You could set it as 4K if you wanted to a little later on. And let's set the match to exactly halfway between width and height, so as it scales both sides evenly and perfectly. And you can see the button is now quite small, very small. So let's now modify this button to be something, well, more sizable. So let's use our rect tool and let's zoom in, make sure we are set on button, and let's drag this corner upwards to about there, so as it looks more like a key on the keyboard or piano, and it does. Let's slim it down just a little bit. And now what we're going to do is we're going to open the button itself. So if you click the arrow next to the button, and where it says text, TMP, I'm actually going to delete over here in the text component where it says button. So it's just a white face. So now it does generally look more like a piano key. And if we press play, what this will do is it will bring us into our game so we can test this in real time. Now, the great thing about buttons is they're predefined to work on both PC and mobile devices. And what I mean by that is we don't need to do any extra coding for it to work on a PC or in mobile. So everything we test in the PC now will work just fine on mobile. And if we try clicking this button, you should hopefully see it flash grey. That means that our button is working intentionally. It's working perfectly as we need it to. Obviously, there's no code to tell the button what to do. That's something that we will get into. So, we now have our first key set up exactly how we want. So, what we're going to do is we're going to import the notes that we're going to use on our piano. So, in our assets folder right here, I'm going to drag and drop this folder, which is called notes. And I will leave a link in the description and in the pinned comment for you to click on and go and download these notes for your app. Obviously, you don't have to use these. You could use any ones at all that you find in an asset store or an asset website. But like I say, you can get these for free if you go and click the link. So in these notes, we have multiple different files. So we have the A, B, C, D, all the keys that we're going to need, including the sharps or flats, whatever you want them to be. In this case, we're going to refer to them as sharps. And we have the upper and lower. So you could do a full length piano. I'm not going to do a full length piano. I'm just going to do two sections of the piano. And you can obviously take that further if you want to. So how do we make it so as this actually works? Well, what we're going to do first is we're going to test everything out with our keyboard and make sure that functions as normal. So we're going to need to add a game object for our C key, as that's the first one that we're going to use. So let's go to game object. Let's go to create empty. And that will flag up as a game object and it will allow you to rename this. So what are we going to call this? We're going to call this low C. And what that means is that's going to be our C key on the low end of our piano. Now, what we need to do is drag and drop the low C value, the low C audio file onto the low C hierarchy file. So, like that. And it's dragged it onto there for whatever reason. Let's try that again. Low C onto low C. And you'll see that over here you now have an audio source applied. You can see that play on awake is ticked. And if we were to press play now, it will indeed play that note when it decides it's going to, because it is ticked play on awake. There we go. So there is our first note. So we've got some sound in our game now. Well, what we need to do is we need to untick play on awake. And what that will do is it will prevent it from playing whenever our app starts. And what we need to do is we need to create some code that allows us to press, in this case, let's do the Q key, and that will be our first key. So let's go to our assets again. Let's right click, create, and let's go on folder and call this scripts. And in here, let's right click, create, and we have C# script here, but in, I think, Unity 6, this may be referred to as a monoscript or monobehavior script. But either way, it's the same thing. So let's create this script and let's have this as key control. And let's open that up in Visual Studio. What is Visual Studio? It's the place that you can do all of your programming in. Now, some of you may not have programmed before, some of you may have done, but we're going to quickly go through a couple of things that basically instantly appear in this script. These are the default views of the script. So here at the top, we have something referred to as the namespace. The namespace you can think of a little bit like a library. It's where all the information is stored for the script to reference, i.e., let's say you want to understand something about dinosaurs. You go to a library to read a book, and now you have that information in your brain, and you can recite that information and do things with that information. That is exactly how the script is working here. It needs to know something from, for example, the Unity engine, so it references it in the namespace. Next, we have the class. Now, the class name has to be identical to the actual script name. So remember we called the script key control? Well, make sure that the class is always named key control. If you change the name of the class, make sure you change the name of the script, and same other way around. Change the script, change the class. Next, we have these highlighted in green. These are just annotations. These aren't lines of code. They're just ways of putting little notes inside the script itself. So let's say you want to make a note, i.e. in this case, started call before the first frame update. You just put a double slash, and there you go. You can put a note. So that line is never executed as code. Next, we have some methods. In this case, we have the start and update method. And you can see just here by the annotations that they tell you exactly what they do. Start only runs once and it's done on the first frame. Update is referred every single frame that the game is running. So in this case, you could think of update as a way of constantly monitoring something within the game. That's how we're going to approach the programming for this piano app. So we need to make sure that we have every single frame this script understanding whether we're doing something, i.e., are we pressing the Q key? Are we pressing something on screen? Something like that. So, how do we do this? Well, let's get rid of void start and let's get rid of the annotations because we do not need them. What we do need, however, is a variable. What is a variable? Well, a variable can be used in many different ways, but for us, what we're going to use it as is a way to determine what an object is. So we're going to declare a variable as a game object because that game object is going to be the notes that we play. So to do this, we're going to open square bracket and we're going to type in serialize field. And we're also going to give this variable a definition. So we're going to have it as a game object. And now we need to name this variable. What can we name it? Well, something useful. It's the low C key. So let's call it low C with a semicolon. Why do we need the semicolon? Easy. That's just to say the line has now ended and we can move on to the next line of code. Now, one thing I will notice as I hit return here, Unity, or Visual Studio in this case, will try and assume what it thinks lines of code actually are. You don't necessarily have to agree with it, but in this case, it thinks the next variable that we want to declare is high C, and that's not going to be the case. So for now, we can just ignore that and go to our void update and click here between the curly brackets. So what do we want to happen? Well, we want to be able to press our Q key and then play that note that we have imported into our hierarchy. But to do that, we need to do something really clever first. We need to turn that note off and then turn it back on instantly. Now, because this is a very simple app, it's not going to be horrendously tedious on resources. So, although this isn't, the ultimate, best, fantastic, best way of doing it, it's the easiest, quickest, and most useful and most understanding for newcomers to Unity. So, like I say, we're not aiming for some mega cool Call of Duty style coding here. So, how do we do this? Well, we need to detect an input. So, we need to see if we're pressing the Q key. So, to do that, we need to use an if statement. So, we say if, and in brackets, input, and that's a capital I. And remember, capitalization is hugely important when it comes to programming because in the case of game object up here, game object with a lowercase g is something different to game object with an uppercase g. So just make sure you do the correct capitalization. So input dot get key down. And in brackets, we need to put the key code and then the key that we want it to reference. So in this case, we put key code dot q. Close bracket, open curly bracket, and hit return. So what have we done here? Well, we've stated if the input is pressing down code Q, then we do the following. And what do we do? Well, we can say low C dot set active, and you'll see right now it is predicting what we're going to put, and it is exactly as we want. So we need to press tab and tab again, and that will fill in the line of code rather than us having to type it out. So if we hit return, we can do the same again. Low C dot, and it's already predicting what we're going to do. So let's agree with it. Let's press tab until it turns the correct color and is no longer grayed out. So what have we done in this script? Well, we've said if we're pressing Q, then turn off low C and then immediately turn it back on. Now, do you remember when we had play on awake set as active? That's now going to come into play. So let's save that script and then head back into Unity. Give it a second just to compile. It may take a couple of seconds. You can see it doing there. Shouldn't take too long. Usually with a script, it is fairly quick. There we go. So back into Unity. And now we need to apply this script to our scene. So what we'll do is we'll go game object, create empty again, and we'll call this scene control, because when you use this for different things. So let's drag and drop key control onto the scene control object right there. And you'll see here, this is where we have low C, which is our game object here. So let's drag and drop low C over here. And what we've done there is we've told the script that when we've referred to a variable, this is what we mean when we refer to that variable. So now let's click on low C. Let's tick play on awake, but let's turn that object off. And you can do that up here, just underneath the inspector word there, untick it, and it will turn grey in your hierarchy. So now, if we press play, we should be able to press the Q key multiple times and have that sound play, no problem at all. Perfect. So the way this is functioning is even if that C key is on, we turn it off and turn it back on again so we can reset that play on awake. So last time we had our code that when we press the letter Q on our keyboard, it plays a note. And this key right here represents that. So let's get to a point now where we can align all of our keys together so as we basically have everything we need. So if you don't know what a keyboard layout actually looks like, you can actually decipher it from the notes that we imported. If you remember, we started with low C. Then we have a C sharp, and then a D, and then a D sharp, and then an E, and an F. So let's build up until F for now. So this key right here, if we select it, let's rename this to LC, which is short for low C. And let's now duplicate that. So I'm going to close that up so the text disappears, and then I'm going to hold Control and press D. And what that will do is it will duplicate this exact object. And if we move it to the side, we can snap it into position there. And if we go to our game view, you can see that's where they are. Perfect. And there's a gap perfectly in between. Let's now call this LD, because this is going to be the D key. Let's duplicate again. And obviously you can guess what that's going to be. LE. Remember the L stands for low. And then we'll duplicate once again, shift it across to there, and this is going to be LF. So we have 4 notes there, all good. Well, what about those sharp and flat notes? Easy. What we can do is we can take this C, hold Control, press D to duplicate it. However, let's change the color to black. And what I've done there is I've just selected over here in the image component, I've literally clicked on that white there, and it will present you with this wheel and square, and you can just change the color however you like. Now, at first glance, it looks like it has changed the key itself, but it has not. Remember, this is a duplicate, so we can separate that right there. Now, the position of a lot of notes depends on the hierarchy itself. And you can see right here that if we move it, it disappears behind the other keys. And we don't want that to happen. So let's get around that. Let's change this now to low C S. Obviously, the S is for sharp, so it's a C sharp key. So let's drag that down to there. And let's not get confused with C sharp, the script, and C sharp, the note. So because this is now further down here, it means that it is on top of everything that is above it. So we can move this freely around now without any problems. So let's move it into position where the sharp key would be. I'm going to shrink it a little bit. And I'm going to decrease the size. Oops, I've moved my panel there, but it doesn't matter. To, let's say, about there. And should do just fine. And if we press play, I just want to make sure that everything still looks okay when we press the keys on the keyboard. We shouldn't really have a problem once it decides it's going to let us actually play the game in our engine. It is worth noting, though, I'm going to kind of not rush through this, but I'm not going to take as much time as what you should building this keyboard up. Obviously, mine's going to look a little bit weird, but you should definitely take the time to arrange the keys, make them a little bit bigger, make it a little less clumsy, is probably the right word to use. But we'll soon see how this looks. So, yeah, we can still click, no problem. And although it doesn't quite look it, you might be able to just see. You can see the indication down here when I click the black key. There we go. So everything is working as intended. So now let's do D sharp. So hold control on C sharp and press D to duplicate. And in the scene view, let's move that into position to be about there. And let's rename this to DS. So that's low C sharp, low D sharp. Remember, we have these here. So we have done from C all the way to F now. I think we have anyway, haven't we? So C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F. Yep. Okay. So now we need to change this so as we keep going, basically. I am going to do this real time, but I am going to talk a little bit as well about what we're going to do and how we're going to approach this. So let's kind of cheat a little bit now. Let's select LC here all the way to LF and hold down the Shift key and you'll select all four. Now, if you hold Control and press D, it will duplicate all four, but it will duplicate them below their original object rather than below. All you can do is just drag them down to there. And now let's move them into position. So round about there. Again, you should take a lot more time than what I do with this. I'm just kind of getting this through so we can move on to the next bit. So this one is, so this is LEF. So this is LG. And then this one is LA. And then LB. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete that one because we don't need it right now. Let's get the low keys all set on our screen before we carry on. So we can take this low D, let's hold control, press D to duplicate and move it down to the end. And then let's move it into place there. And that is low F sharp. And finally, if we can press the right keys, duplicate once again and once more. And we have first low end of our keyboard layout done. So let's quickly name these. So this is, if you look, G sharp and A sharp. So this one is low G sharp, and the next one is low F sharp. So we have half a keyboard set up there. Now, we are going to do the rest of it, but let's have a look how that looks in game view. Yep, it's not perfect, but it will do the trick. So how do we make it so as the rest of the keys on our keyboard, actual keyboard, will play notes? We have half the keyboard set up, so let's do this half of the keyboard. So let's go to our script once again. And the great thing is, because we've already got this set out, we don't need to worry too much about writing code after code after code. What I am going to do is I'm going to go after this if component, this if statement here, and just below it, I'm going to put double forward slash. Do you remember when I mentioned the annotations? Well, we're going to do that, and we're going to put end key, just to give us an indication that that's the end of the key. And I'm going to hit return a few times. Next, what we need to do is declare all the variables for each note. That means we need to do low D, E, F, G, A, B, and the sharps that go with it. So to do that, let's take that line there, copy it, paste it, and let's say low D, and paste again, and then we've got low E, and then low F, and then low G, and then A and B. So you can see the how we're actually working this. You should be able, well, hopefully you should be able to see. And then let's do the sharps of those. So we've got low C sharp, we've got a low D sharp, like that, and then we've got a low F sharp, and a G and an A. So I'm going to copy those two, place them there, and change that to a sharp. So we've got all our low keys and then all our low sharp keys. So how do we make it so all the other keys do as we want them to? Well, it's actually really easy. So we take that if statement there with the Q. In fact, let's take the end key as well, just so we can kind of differentiate between them. And you know what? Let's just paste it a couple of times down below. Nice and simple. So it all says the same, but now what we need to do is change this bit here. So we want W, and then we want E, and then R, and then T, and then Y. And as we've done that, we've got low C here, so we need to change this to low D, and then low E. Like it's really just as simple as that. Just kind of going through each one, changing the letter. Like, because the code's already written, so why do we need to, rewrite it? G, A, B, and B, and oh, that one I didn't change it, did I? So that's U. So at this point, what have we got here? Well, we have just basically written all of the keys for our majors. So now our main keys, I should say. So now we just need to do the same for our sharps. Now this one is a little bit different because we're going to use the numbers on here. We're not going to use the number pad. We want to use the keys that correlate above to the sharps. So rather than put input.keycode 1 or 2, we actually need to do a little bit extra here. So let's take this if statement here and let's change this. We need to say, instead of U, this is going to be the C sharp. Now Q is C, so logically number 2 would be the sharp of that. So we say alpha 2. And what that's done is it's referred to the alpha numbers on top of your keyboard. And that one will be CS, and this one also be CS. So you can see what we've done there. We've changed this to say we're pressing 2, so that's our sharp. So now we need to do a couple more. So let's take that bit there and do it 4 more times. So alpha 3 will be our D sharp. And there will no be alpha 4. However, if we look at R is F. So that means we skip a number. So rather than have 2, 3, 4, we'll actually have this as 5, 6, and 7. And then we change that to F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp, and save that script. And I will put this script in the link in the description and the pinned comment if you want to download it. It may seem a little bit daunting, but if you take your time and look through it, you should be able to understand exactly how this is all working, and it looks fairly decent. So if we head back into Unity now, after it has compiled, the last thing we need to do for now is we need to duplicate all of our objects here, which contain the notes, and then reference them in this script, which is the scene control there, There's all of our variables. So now let's hold Control and press D a number of times, duplicate. And let's go along logically and then rename. So low C, that's now C sharp. And then this one is now D. So let's change that to low C sharp. For the lowercase s, I'm going to put. And then this one is a low D. And the next one after D is D sharp. I'm not sure why that's zoomed in there. That was not meant to happen. Let me double click the canvas again. So, yep, that one is low D sharp. And the next one, low C, needs to be replaced, obviously. So this one is low E. Change the name of that. Next one, yeah, just you could probably skip ahead now because a lot of what is going here is just me doing something that you are probably already way ahead of me. So I'm just gonna keep doing this. You go carry on, Scroll forward if you need to. It's all good. So F sharp, and then the next one after F is, where is it? G. So that is low. If I can press the right keys, low G. And then we've got low G sharp. And then we should have low A. If it will actually let me. Have we changed that right? That's right, yeah. Let's try that again. My typing skills are not the best today. So low A goes onto there, low A sharp onto there, low B onto there. Let's do this quick now. So that is low A sharp, and finally low B. So we have all our notes in place. Let's actually put them into our scene control. So low D onto there, low E, low F, low G, low A, low B, and then C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and finally A sharp. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save my scene. It's probably also worth noting that the scene itself is the sample scene that comes with Unity. So just saving it will do the trick just fine. But if we press play now, we should be able to press all of our keys that are represented, and they should work just fine. Perfect. So, in this script that we had last time, if you remember, we just set all of our notes for the low end. And what we really need to do is we now need to set it for the high end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of these variables right here, if my mouse will let me. And I'm going to place them just below. And I'm going to quickly rename everything as high. Now, obviously, the reason I'm doing that is because it is quite literally the high end of the keyboard. And if you have multiple versions of the keyboard, say like you've got more than just two ends like we've got for this, you can just expand it accordingly with all of your variables. Doesn't really matter how you refer to them. You could have Ultra C and then Ultra D and then Ultra E, whatever. It's up to you, as long as each individual variable is indeed different. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to repeat the process of what we did last time for all the other keys. However, I'm going to speed up this bit of the video to near the end of where I've got it complete, because there are parts of this code which I do need to cover a little bit differently. So I will see you on the other side. Okay, so I've got all the notes in place apart from just a few. So because we're no longer dealing with keys and numbers, we would be dealing with some symbols on our keyboard. We have to address them and name them a little bit differently. So to set for the high F, what we need to do is do the square bracket. And we can easily do that by saying left bracket in the section where we would normally have a letter. The same would be the case for right bracket. And then as we go further down, you would also have the hash here. So if your keyboard is a little bit different, you may have to do something slightly different. So if you've not got the hash next to your square bracket on the right, you may need to use a different key code. But you can find the key code symbols on Unity's website anyway, so don't worry about trying to find them. But if yours is the same as mine, you have hash, and then the last key is going to stretch onto the number pad, which for me is going to be keypad 7. The same also applies to the sharp notes as well. So the last three are going to be at the end of the top row, and they are going to be minus as well as equals, if I can spell minus correctly, as well as backspace for me. And as mentioned, I will put all of these in the linked description and in the pinned comment. You can go and download it there. So we just need to change these. A, so we've got A on the last one, C, D. So this one is high F sharp. This one is high G sharp. And have I done that right? Have I missed G sharp? I think I've missed G sharp, haven't I? Yeah, there we are. So just the thing at the top. So make sure that is right. And the last ones here, I got the brackets, the hash, and the keypad. So E. So now we just need to change this from high E to high F, the capital. And same with this one. And then high G on that one, high G on this one. And then high A, and once again, high B, and high B. So that is, for all intents and purposes, the script complete for pressing the keys on our keyboard. So we now just need to head back into Unity when it has compiled, and we just need to kind of build all that together with the keys we have. So if you remember, we already have all the lows set out. We just need to basically duplicate them and change them to the high ones. And I am not going to worry too much about what they're named. We'll do this as soon as Unity has compiled the script that we've got here. But I'm not going to worry too much about the names, but you probably should rename them. So in order to do all this, I'm going to select all of our notes in the hierarchy, hold Control and press D. And remember what we did earlier with the keys. I'm going to drag, so hold the left mouse button, drag down to here, so they all stay together. And let's make sure we have the canvas in full view again, just in case. So these, although they say low, I'm going to rename these at some point. But for now, these are all going to be my high notes. So anything that has a 1 after it is going to be the high note. So it's just a case of dragging and dropping all of these, like so. I wish it'd stop doing that. Zooming in when it shouldn't do. Just make sure we've got that right. So that's high E. Yep, so high, and then the F onto there, and then F sharp onto there, G onto there, G sharp onto there, A, and then A sharp and B. Now I'm going to quickly rename all of these. Again, I will speed up the video so you don't have to sit and watch, so I'll see you on the other side in a second. Okay, so that's all of those renamed. So now if we go to our scene control, you'll see all of these now appear as intended. And just like we did last time, you just need to drag and drop each one of those variables into the correct place. And this only takes a couple of seconds. So I'm not sure if it's really worth speeding it up because, in all fairness, I'm almost done already with me waffling on. So we have everything in place now. And to be fair, if you wanted to leave it at the point it is now, I guess that's entirely up to you. Because we should have a fully functioning piano with just our keyboard now. So let's press play and let's try that out and see how it sounds. Brilliant. It works as intended. So we now need to make sure the touch controls work. How do we do that? Well, we need to create a script that will allow us to touch those buttons, and we need to set those buttons up correctly. So how do we do that? Well, we can still use the same script. So let's head back to our script. And down the bottom, I'm just going to get rid of the gaps there that we don't really need. Now, the placement of the next bit of code is very dependent on how you have your code set up. So you need to make sure that this here, where we have void update, you need to follow this line all the way down and place the next bit after it. So you need to make sure that this is what's known as a new method. So this method is going to allow us to basically press the button itself and play, for example, the low C key. So in order to do that, what we need to do is say public void, and we'll call this low press C. So we're pressing the C button. Open close bracket, open curly bracket. So the reason why we're having this as a public method is because the button needs access to it. You'll see why this is relevant in a few minutes' time when we do it. So what happens when we press this C? Well, we want the exact same as this. So whenever we press the Q button on our keyboard, we want the exact same thing to happen whenever we press that first key. So we can literally copy those two lines of code right there and place them in this method down here and save. So then once that's done, if we head to Unity after it's compiled, we just now need to do a little bit of work to make sure that the button functions correctly as a button, which means we now need to click this first key. And remember, that is a button. And what we need to do is whenever it says on click here, we need something to occur. So how do we do that? Well, we need to click on this plus button over here. And you can see that we need to attach an object. And that object is going to be scene control. So drag and drop that onto there. And now click on no function, click on key control, and then low press C. And what that will do is it will apply the code that we've just written to this one button. So if we press play now, we should be able to click this button and it will function the exact same as when we press the Q key on our keyboard. And as I mentioned earlier, the way this is all set up, this will work perfectly as a touchscreen. So this button requires no extra effort to work on a touchscreen, i.e. a phone or tablet. So the next thing we need to look at here is we need to understand what else we can do to get every other key functioning as you would expect. Well, all you need to do is just create all those methods. So let's go through one more just so as we can get this correct. Let's have this as low press D. In fact, we'll do two more. So low press D and low press E. And like I said, it works exact same as how we have it above. So E, and if I can type, low E dot set active. So this one obviously becomes F. Oh, I've got that wrong, haven't I? Sorry, that should be D. I don't know the alphabet. E, E, and I'll tell you what, let's just copy that, do one more. E, and change that to F, change that to F, and change that to F. So you can see that we have all those different functions for each of the keys on the keyboard that is on our screen. So make sure the script is saved. And let's head back into Unity. And when we're in, all we need to do is just set all those other keys up the exact same way as what we did previously. So let's quickly go over that again, just so as we have that down and we know what we're doing. Let's make sure we're on low D, and we need to add the game object. So we click on the plus there, scene control, over to there, no function, key, and we're on low press D. Same again. We need to add that, but I'll tell you what, let's bring this scene control up so we can actually have it in a better position. There we go. So we're not scrolling up and down the hierarchy all the time. So we're on E, so we've got that there. Drag and drop scene control, no function, key control, low press E. And let's do it on F. And it is plus, scene control, drag, no function, key control, F. So we have C, D, E, and F all set up. So let's press play. And when it's compiled, we can test it and we should have excellent. All of them work. So then the next thing to do would be to duplicate everything so as it all fits with your script, all nice and flush. So once again, I'm going to speed up this part of the video and I will see you on the other side when I've written all of these methods. Okay, so I have written all of the lows and the highs for each available key. Each one is now set as a unique method. Nice, quick and simple. So let's save that script. And as I've said, I will leave this script linked in the pinned comment and description if you just want to copy and paste it into your project yourself. So let's head back into Unity. And as you might have already seen, we don't have the high notes set up just yet. So let's quickly go ahead and create those. So if we copy and paste, or hold control, press D to duplicate, and drag all of those down into the lower part, so just there. And then let's have them all selected. Select our rect tool, and let's move them all to this side. So now we have both sides of the piano set up. You should obviously take much more time in making sure that this is correct because I have just kind of rushed through it just to make sure everything can work as intended. And while we're at it, let's quickly go ahead and rename each of these keys. So obviously, rather than have L for low, we're changing these to H for high. And it just as quick and simple as that. There's not much more to it. So as I'm going through renaming these, let's talk about what we're going to do next. We need to now apply each of those methods to the individual keys themselves. And to do that, we just have to do what we've done previously. Just go through each one, add them all in, and all good to go. And the good thing for you is I am going to speed up that process in the video so you don't have to sit and watch once again. I know this part has been very sped up, but it's very it can be very boring to watch in a video because you know what you're doing at this point, don't you? So there is all of our keys renamed. And like I said, I'm going to speed up the next part while I do the exact same thing we were doing earlier, applying the game object to each key and making sure that you click the correct method in the function. I'll see you on the other side again. Okay, and there we go. So we have every single one of those buttons now set up correctly. So if we press play, we should be able to click each one of those buttons. And remember, they are set up so as you can touch them on the touch screen without any problems whatsoever. Excellent. Perfect. So we have all functions of this piano pretty much set up, but I'm going to add some extra features before we kind of wrap this up. Just some cool little features that you can learn a little bit of programming from. So what I want to do is I want to have like a little button here that when you press it, it will automatically play a tune. Now, you might have to know how to play a piano a little bit to kind of work this out, but not necessarily. You could just do what I do here and put the notes in whatever order I put them in, or you could try and make your own just randomly. So how do we do that? Well, we need to go back to our main script. And all the way up here, if you remember, we had all of our variables preset here. Now that's handy because we can use this same script once again and the same variables to actually do this. And what we need to do is we need to have a coroutine. A coroutine will allow us to basically wait for a certain period of time before the next note is played, just so it all flows kind of nicely. Now to do that, I'm going to put this coroutine further down here. So after where we have this public void high press A sharp, let's put something else. Let's go down a couple of lines. And we're going to put, instead of void, we're going to put I enumerator. And what that is a way of declaring a coroutine. We'll call this auto song. Open close bracket, open curly bracket, and hit return. Now you'll instantly see that it's underlined auto song in red. That basically means we don't have any way of waiting at the moment. So to do this, let's start by going yield, return new, wait for seconds, and in brackets 0.3f and semicolon. So what we're doing here is we're waiting for a third, just under a third of a second after we've pressed our button, and then we'll play our first note. So we'll say basically what we've done the whole time before. We can use the exact same code once again. So if we copy that and place it down here, we've got exactly what we want to happen. So after just under a third of a second, so 0.3 seconds, we play this. So let's go one step further and say after another third of a second, let's play another note. Well, how about we copy this code here and we change that to G, so low G. And let's do it again. So let's wait for another third of a second. And rather than have a low note, let's have high C, like so. And then once again, let's do one more before we complete the song later in this tutorial. And let's have this as high G. Now, hopefully, those who are of musical ears may start to recognize what this song actually is. But how do we get this song to play? Well, firstly, we need to have a method which relates to the button. So above this coroutine, we need to say public void start song, open close bracket, open curly bracket. And the way we do it is we need to start a coroutine. So we can say start coroutine, and in brackets, the name of our coroutine, which is auto song, and then open close bracket once again, and semicolon, and save that script. So we now need to create a button and then apply this method to that button, which will then, when we press it, run this coroutine. So let's head back into Unity once it's compiled. And the idea of what I want to do here is I'm going to show you this working, and then I'm going to basically speed up the video like we did previously and just create a song which can be auto played. And you can obviously use that script in your game if you want to go download it. It's in the pinned comment and description. So let's go to game object. Let's go to UI. Let's create a new button. And I'm going to leave it called button. It's fine as it is. And let's move it over here to the top. Does it look okay in game view? It does. Maybe we should make it a little bit bigger, to be honest. Tiny bit small. There we go. So now what we do is we go down to click on the plus, like we have with all the keys. Add our scene control in there, no function. Go to key control and down to start song. And I'm going to save my scene. Next thing to do, if we go to press play and start it, we should hopefully see or hear this in action. And obviously, if you use different notes, that's fine. Remember, all these still work. But let's see what happens now. There we go. That wasn't me playing that. That was that button. There we go. So you can obviously do loads of different things with this script, but what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put a bunch more notes in here, and we'll reconvene in a couple of seconds when I sped the video up. And there we go. So, bunch of notes, all one after the other, which basically will autoplay a song. Now, the song that you're about to hear may not sound as you would expect for various reasons, mainly copyright, but you should get the gist of how this song should sound. And as I've mentioned, you can get this script in the pinned comment if you want to do it yourself, or, it's up to you. Write your own. So, I'm going to save that script. And I'm now going to head back into Unity when it's compiled. And then, fingers crossed, we should be able to press our button and have our song play. And let's see how this sounds. I'm not hopeful. I'm honestly not hopeful because I've never actually tried this arrangement before. I've only got it written down in my notes for this tutorial, but here we go. Okay, so hopefully those of you who know the song may know that song and may know that it's intentionally not meant to sound just like it for copyright reasons. So, like I said, script is there if you want to go and get it. If you want to make your own song, it's cool. You can make different songs if you want to, have different buttons doing different things, but that's fundamentally how you could get a button to auto play a song. So up until now, we have everything set, but we could do with making it look a little nicer, a little bit more useful, we could say. So rather than just have the plain old boring blue, let's actually import a nice image to give some feeling and emotion to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder, and we'll just call this textures. And I'm going to import into this folder a background image and an icon that we're going to use later on in this video. So drag them both in to here. And if you want, you can get these if you click the link in the pinned comment or in the description. You can download them for free. So how do we get this image onto here? Well, what we can do is go to Game Object. We can go to UI and let's go to Raw Image. And what we'll do now is name this background. And we're going to change the anchoring position of it. So what is anchoring? Well, it determines whereabouts on the screen an object will display whenever the screen is shrunk, increase, changes, whatever. So if we have it currently set as center like this, then no matter how big our screen is, wherever it is, this image will always appear dead center of the screen. If we click this one here, it will stretch it. So this particular square right now looks just like this. However, if we were to stretch the screen, the square wouldn't stay the same size. It would stretch in with basically with the screen. So same size. So if we pull it out and increase the size, you can see that it is there somewhere. You just can't see it right now. But the actual cube itself will increase in size. There we go. You can see it, it's changing how it looks. So it goes in retaliation with whatever the screen size is. So in order to make this a full screen behind the piano, what we need to do is set the left to 0, the top to 0, right to 0, bottom to 0. And remember earlier when we had the problem of the black sharp keys appearing in the wrong place? Well, This is the same instance with this background. We need to make sure that this background is the very first object in the canvas. So just drag and drop to the top. Next, let's drag this particular image onto this texture over here. And there we go. There's our background. And that looks pretty good. It's not bad. You can always change how it stretches if you want as well. It's entirely up to you. So you could theoretically stretch the image down like that and view it like that. But again, it's up to you. You don't even have to use this image. You could use something completely different. Now we could add a little bit of color to it and change it from the kind of blue and purple and orange feel. So if we click this color button here, like we did with the black keys earlier, you could change it to green and give it a real kind of dusky, greeny, nighttime, maybe even some aurora feels there, you know. But again, it's up to you. I just feel like having something like this adds some character to an app. So, yep, that'll do just fine for now. So what can we do now? Well, we need to adjust some of the game settings themselves before we can build it to test it. If we go to Edit, and if we go down to Project Settings, you'll be presented with plenty of different options. And really, we don't need to worry about too much of them. These cover all sorts of different things within the game itself. What we want to look for first is the Player section. And no, this doesn't refer to the player as in a first person player or a third person player. This refers to the actual player that the game is playing in, the standalone executable file. So we can call this default company. Well, let's change that to JV, me. Product name, we'll keep as Piano App. We'll keep the version as 1.0. I guess you could change it to 1.1 or 2.0 if you wanted. But let's select a default icon. So let's click on select and let's select that piano icon that we imported earlier. You can cover a couple of different settings here if you want to, depending on what you're building for. But for all intents and purposes, these don't really matter. We're building a simple piano app here, aren't we? So, how do we make it so as we can physically test this in an executable? Well, once we have our name set up here and a nice little icon, we can close that. And if you remember, a while ago, we went to File, Build Settings, and we explored what we could do here. Well, firstly, I want to do this for Windows because I want to test it for Windows to make sure it all works. So make sure this is selected with the little Unity icon there, and let's click on Build and Run. It'll prompt you what you want to save it as. So I'm going to create a new folder and call this Piano Test. It's up to you what you want to call it, and then select folder. And then it'll say, do we want to make changes to the scene? Yes, of course we do, because the changes we made were the ground image that we put in. So all this will do now is it will compile everything that we've created up until this point, and it will put it in an executable file that we could run anywhere, anyhow. So if there is, for example, it could be a full game that you've created and you're building it right now, that is exactly the same process as it will do for that. Now, because this is going to be a fairly small app, I'm hoping this is not going to take too long to build. If you're on a slower machine, it might take longer. If you've got a very complicated project, it'll take longer. But as I said, this is a very, very small app, so it shouldn't take too long. And there we go, it's done just as I finished talking. So now what it will do is it will run that app straight up for us. So we should be able to play it on screen as soon as this is done. Just need to give it a second. There we go. So it's doing the last little bit now. When you see it running, you know, building player, you know that it's pretty much done. Okay, and there we go. So now what we should see is the game pop up. There we go, made with Unity. And there we go. So let's click. Let's Excellent. It works. And let's try the keyboard. Perfect. And let's try the button up here. I really hope I don't get copyrighted with that because that would not be nice. But either way, our build works. And as I've mentioned earlier, these buttons all function just fine. If they work right now, they will work on touchscreen, no problem. So you could theoretically build it for your Android device, iOS device, tablet, whatever. So let's Alt F4 to close that and head back into Unity. And the last thing we're going to do, and I can't really build it per se, but we can go to, let's say, Android. And the final thing is let's switch platform. And it'll do this thing again where it'll go through everything. And what will effectively happen is it will switch everything on its platform to being a focus for an Android device. And it's the same with anything. If you wanted to go back to Windows, you would just select the Windows and switch platform once again. Worth noting that the bigger your project, the longer it will take to switch platform. Smaller your project, then obviously the less time it will take to switch platform. Because this is a very small app, it should take less than a minute to switch platform. But if you've created a massive, intricate game, it will take much longer to switch platform because there's more stuff to do. So effectively, that's pretty much all there is to this series. We've created our piano, we've tested it, we've built it, we know it works. The last thing you would need to do is switch platform to Android, like we're doing here, and build and run. And there you go. You're good to go. Same with iOS if you are doing this on a Mac and you're building for iOS. So, I hope that entire thing was educational for you. I hope that you've learned something new. And I do hope that you will show me your results because I would love to see what you have created from this piano app. Remember to subscribe and click the notification bell, and you can stay up to date with every tutorial I do upload on this channel because I'm always uploading new content, new videos, new ideas, new things to learn. And hopefully, I will see you in the next video. Take care.